Virtually every leader in the health freedom movement talks about the insecurity of the food supply as one of the primary avenues of tyranny. Our family has rigorously sourced our foods for over a decade, and one of our favorite sources is Farm Match. And specifically, if you are in San Diego, Real Food Club PMA. My kids are literally made from their maple breakfast sausage and the amazing carnitas we make from their pasture-raised pork. But from regeneratively raised raw dairy products to the organic potato chips made in regenerative lard or anything you might get at your local farmer's market, our family's overall wellness and the security of our food lies in the hands of Farm Match and Real Food Club. I am so excited to be sharing about Farm Match and Real Food Club to offer Future Generations podcast listeners 10% off your first order. You can find the code and link in the show notes. Enjoy the rest of the show. Love and appreciate you all. The desire to go off-grid and disconnect from the system was one of the single most important initiatives any household could have. Whether it is growing our own food, becoming sovereign in our energy production and usage, establishing alternative communication strategies, or digging a well and finding the infinity of primary water. About a year and a half ago, our family moved into our new home in North County, San Diego on 3 acres of precious land here in America's finest county. One of the first things we did was hire Food Forest Abundance to design a regenerative layout for our land. From the different trees to plant differing berry guilds and synergistic pollinators, to consulting on alternative energy, collecting our rainwater, and even helping us find our local well guy, Food Forest Abundance and their Freedom Farm Academy has been pivotal in the gradual and consistent evolution of our household towards true sovereignty from the system. They have helped us simplify a very confusing process and helped us create the design of our dreams. It doesn't matter if you have 3 acres, dozens or hundreds, or just a small yard. Food Forest Abundance has something to offer you and your family in your journey to move your entire household off-grid. Use the code TheFutureGen to work with the absolute best in the world, Food Forest Abundance, to create your own freedom farm and get off-grid at a discounted rate. Welcome to another episode of the Future Generations podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stanton Hom, and this episode with Andrew Genovese is one of the most powerful that I believe I have gotten to do in a long time. Andrew and I know each other a long time, just waking up together into this movement for health and human freedom and being often on the same stages, in the same crowds, recognizing that there is just this monstrosity of a movement for powerful women and mothers fighting for their children, and this quiet, silent, somewhat negligent group of men who are literally not even on the playing field. Andrew's conversation is largely about rites of passage. He goes through his own vision quest, his own journey, basically in Olympic National Forest, like on his own, no resources, no food, loses his water filtration system, animals, silence, the elements, 40-mile-per-hour winds, 29-degree nights, and he does what men have done for generations, ancestrally. Rites of passage. And he shared a story about it, and he shared about how he is actually inviting men to take action and be a part of a process like that. And it's not a matter of if I will, it's when I will. And I know what the outcome is going to be intuitively, logically, rationally, experientially, spiritual, emotional, mental transformation that I believe men need now more than ever. I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope you share this episode with the men in your life, the husbands in your life, the fathers in your life. If you're a man yourself, we talked about it, that he does a lot of Zooms with spouses, with wives. And often, he's inviting, the men that they have to accept. They have to be willing to jump in to something like this with their own volition, with their own consent, with their own buy-in, to even have a chance to come out the other end as a man. Genuinely love and appreciate Andrew and you guys. I hope you enjoy this episode and share it far and wide. Love and appreciate you all. Welcome to the Future Generations podcast, providing you with the world-changing content necessary to inspire you, your family, and our planet to a life of optimal health potential. We'll help you make the choices that powerfully influence the lives you bring into this world. It's time to strengthen our do better now and for our future generations. I'm your host, Dr. Stanton Hom. Okay, welcome to another episode of the Future Generations podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stanton Hom, and I have with me someone who's no stranger to the Future Generations podcast, but also has been on our stage blessing our community with an amazing session of breathwork, the one and only Andrew Genovese. Andrew, I just want to do a quick aside. Just going back to Heart of Freedom 3, that was the end of 2021, and I remember you doing your session of breath work, and there is a guy who has been filming for us in our county for the whole COVID, right? So literally 4+ years. And I saw him after that session. I don't know if he came up to you at any point, but he was bawling his eyes out. He was literally like transmuting some sort of like trigger and shadow, like in the midst of recording Heart of Freedom 3. I have had you in my office. You have literally like done transcendental breath work in my practice. And I just wanted to say welcome back to the podcast. I would love for you to introduce yourself so our audience gets to reintroduce yourself to our audience.
Well, Stan, it's an honor to be back here with you, bro, through some pretty epic history over the last couple of years together. And yeah, obviously how we got connected was through our voice, through speaking our truth and standing up for what we believed in the time was absolutely necessary to speak on, even if that meant losing our work or our practice. But the path of integrity and authenticity was much deeper than any of that. And obviously the risks of not speaking out were far greater than what we might have lost if we didn't. So yeah, that's what it got us on the same path of being passionate about health and health freedom. And obviously I was playing my own unique role in that smorgasbord of naturopaths and doctors and chiropractors. And then there was me. I was coming in with the consciousness piece and the breath work. And so, yeah, we've been on some hell of a journey. And yeah, at the end of the day, if you're not familiar with my work, all my work revolves around planetary reclamation and constantly just in service to the highest of where I'm being guided, of where that message wants to be delivered, of allowing God to work through me to transmit the message that is in the highest resonance of what's needed to be heard by humanity.
It's pretty, we were just chatting the other day just about just being at these different events, and we would be on stage, we would be, in the crowd, we would be receiving, we would be sharing. And then we would also be like, we're all the dudes, man. It's like 90% women, like these mothers, sometimes having babies in carriers, sometimes breastfeeding in the back, and it's this message of freedom, and this message of what is truly at stake at this stage of humanity. And we were like, whoa, like this is gnarly. Like me, you, Ben Tapper, Alec, like all of our buddies, many of us, I would say the stage was largely a good representation of the population in terms of diversity. But then in the crowd, it was not even a comparison, right? And I was really, really excited to hear, that you were working on some things that are really important for men as we step into this, really important chapter of humanity, right?
Yeah. It was just kind of flabbergasting at times too. Like you said, look at the stage and it be a equal 50% men and women for the most part. And then to look on the audience and see, 83% women and 17% men. And it was just like, I don't know. It was hard to believe at times because it was just so overwhelming, the amount of women. And I was just like, are the men at home? Are they working? Are they in their basement watching TV shows? Where are they? And, one thing that's really important to know is that, through this time of great planetary and universal planet evolution, the feminine is leading the torch in consciousness. And the planet is becoming more feminine. And when we talk about feminine, I'm talking about the feminine energy.
Yeah.
And the feminine energy lies in all of us, right? Masculine energy and feminine energy.
Right.
The king and the queen lies in every single one of us. We have a queen inside of us and we have a king. And so to be connected to those both is to be more connected to who we are and ultimately to God. And so, yeah, it was pretty, I can zoom out now and I can understand so deeply of why we were at that point then and why we're still at the same point now. And still, any person that is in the space of delivering a message of truth, of consciousness, of health freedom, you can put any amount of money that more women are following them dramatically than men.
Wow.
And not just more, but yeah, everyone I know, it's like 80%, 20%, 72%, 28%. I mean, it's overwhelming the amount of women that are awakening to their true divinity and to their power. And again, it just goes back to, with women being so suppressed for thousands of years, it would
Wow.
make sense that the women would have this fire to reclaim their true essence and their true infinite potential as these powerful goddesses that are, bringing life to earth through their womb. And really, like, we could talk about ascension, but it's for women, it's more of like a descension down into where they're bringing life to the earth.
Wow.
And that's where their power lies. And so it's a really, really interesting thing to, just see so many women asking, like, where are the men? Like, where are the awakened men? Where are these like powerful warrior kings? And a lot of women are asking that and have been asking that for years. And so, through my own shortcomings and through my own wounds of, inabilities to show up as a man and in certain ways where I was on point, on fire, and then certain ways where I more struggled to really unify my own internal energies within my own union and with love and showing up as a partner and, through much distortions through my own family and watching a very, very, very chaotic, marriage with my parents. There was much distortion that many men, including myself, have had to work through. And, last couple Augusts ago, I started getting this like direct just ping that I needed to go out into nature and to answer what we call a vision quest or a rites of passage, this time that is so sacred, a time when thousands of years ago, every single ancient culture practiced this ancient ritual of a boy becoming a man.
Wow.
And at this time, it was like take the torch. It is your turn to lead our people. It's your turn to serve our people. It's your turn to protect, to provide, to gather with the men. A time when we were connected to the earth and we weren't just riddled in instant gratification and constant comfort and instant validation and constantly seeking external validation from others and from our wife and from our partner. Right? It was just, we were so much more simply just connected. to the land and to the water and to the food that we ate. And so there has been just so much disconnection through big buildings and giant freeways and fake foods and fake drinks and toxic water with fluoride in it. And so there is a deep need for the grit, the strength, the courage to be reignited in men once again, to know that their voice matters, to know that their truth touches every single part of this land and far, far, far beyond. And so I felt a deep need, not just for myself to answer this call, but when I did answer this call and I spent, 7 days out in the wilderness alone, fasting.
Wow.
The wild transformed me, turned me into an entirely different man. And I don't know that man anymore that before entering that first rites of passage journey, And what's come to me so deeply is without a boy having that ceremonial initiation, becoming a man, he's 56 years old and he looks like a man. He's got a beard, he's got a mustache, he's got gray hair, except inside he feels like a child. And that's what we have today. Men who look like men, but inside they actually feel like a boy. And all those boy energies and inabilities to show up as a man, as a provider, as a protector, as a lover, as a king that leads from his soul and from his heart is deeply absent on the planet right now.
It's I'm a part of a dad's group, and I've been pretty open about that on my podcast about apogee, and I don't think it's perfectly aligned with everything that I know that I'm meant to be. However, what I would say is it is geared towards a very similar language, right? A similar kind of where we have gone through just like this curriculum where we have defined them. I literally, dude, I have this giant post-it note butcher board over here that I do all of my quarterly meetings with my team. And then my wife we started doing them with our family. And I have every single meeting that I've ever done. And it was all stuck in this cabinet where all the post-it notes were rolled up. I took them all out yesterday and scanned them and I threw them away because that's just taking up way too much space. But one of the ones that we did as a family was that we started to define rituals, rhythms, rites of passage, for specifically for our daughter and for my son, right? Specifically things that we would do. And it was really interesting because I had a hard time. Because I didn't have them. I don't even know, but I'm going to ask you because I think you probably have done a deep dive on this. I don't really know ancestrally what it is that we have, installed historically. But what I do know is that it is a simple function of a deficiency of this cultural mandate, right? It's a cultural mandate to, as a man, kind of move, or as a boy, move through this journey and essentially take the reins of your life as a man, that whether it's nature, whether it's war at some point, whether it's, whatever it is that men are supposed to do, protector, provider, you name the thing that biologically we are programmed to do. And Matt Bodro, who's the leader of this group, he says it sometimes days into starting, some men are like, I'm out, dude. I can't do this. They just walk out, and I've had some family members tell me very directly to my face, dude, I don't wear the pants. I'm like, wow, you're just relegate, that just comes out so easily. And I'll say that sometimes oh, I'll go ask the boss, but when push comes to shove, I'm a man in my marriage. I'm a man in my household. And it's gnarly, right? Because so many today, it's just we don't even know at this point. It's so of a societal norm, right? That men are not men, and we're just going to default, right? Including fighting for our families and arguably one of the greatest moments where men should be stepping up. So I'm curious, what are some of those things that you have seen or you know about that are these rites of passage? And I'd love to know what you did as far as your own version of that, because it sounds remarkable. And I've heard a lot about this. I've personally never done anything like this.
Yeah. It's funny. I recently had a brother reach out after posting about my rites of passage coming up here in Washington State in July, July 7th to the 14th, and he was like, hey brother, I feel pretty good in my body and in my work. Like, is it really necessary? Do I need a rites of passage? Like, is it necessary? And then I just started asking him some questions like, are you in your truth? Do you feel like you can lead an army? Do you feel like you can protect a woman? Do you feel like you can protect your children?
Wow.
Do you feel confident that you can literally lead your community to victory, so to speak, or to peace? And he was just like, can I respond to you in 2 days? This is a lot to sit with. And I asked him more questions other than that. But I really wanted to instill in him that he is not exempt from any man who's like, oh, I'm above rites of passage. Every boy on the planet and every ancient culture didn't go through rites of passage by coincidence. No, they were so connected to God and to the ancestors and had spiritual abilities. All of the elders was constantly passed on this ritual, because if you are a man and you do not go through rites of passage, then you never actually become a man spiritually, mentally, and emotionally.
Wow.
And there is a reason why the Comanche, the Lakota, the Hopi, the all of the Native Americans, the Tibetans, the Indians, the Mayans, the Incas, it was like a universal language, like eating, like drinking water, that a boy does not become a man until he sits in his own fire, until he answers this challenge. And the young boys were like, yeah, I want to be challenged. Like, they're a boy, they're like, yeah, I'll step up to the plate. I'll face myself. And then, the Lakota were like, you see that mountain over there? You're going to go to that mountain. You're going to go to the top, and you're going to return whenever you return, whether that's 5 days, 7 days, 6 days. And so that is where the quest began. And he left the community. He hiked to that mountain that was 13, 17, maybe 30 miles away. And he started his journey through the jungle, through the desert, through the forest, went to the top of that mountain, didn't know how he was going to get there, but on the way he had to find water. There was no food. There was no cell phones. There was no mom patting him on the back, picking him up if he fell down. This man had to save himself.
Yeah.
And had to show up for himself, and had to guide himself, lead himself, find the power within him, and trust that his guides, his spirit team, whatever words resonate with you, God was guiding him, that he was going to be safe in his body, that he could go without fasting, that he could feel into the anxiety of, what if I don't make it? What if I die out here? Right? There was a certain level of grit and toughness that men just don't possess today. Right? So it was through this understanding and this knowing of wow, I need to be with myself in nature. I need to show myself that I don't need anyone. No one's going to come save me, no matter how much frustration or anxiety or nervousness of I need to attend to my business. I need to answer emails. I have to be there with my partner. No. This is your sacred time to commune with God and to be with whatever arises. And in saying yes to this journey and finally becoming an initiated man before God, there comes the trust, the faith that you don't know what's going to come up during this time, but you are willing to be with it all, no matter what comes up, no matter how much joy, love, or anger, or rage, or lack, or unworthiness comes up. That boy or man now is deciding consciously to sit in it.
Wow.
And that's what we need men to do all over the world. You know, a new level of grit, a new level of bravery, a new level of courage, a new level of integrity that is willing to be judged or criticized because his voice is everything. For example, all these kids and families that were getting the jab in 2020 and 21, right? Like the men, the people, the women that felt called to speak, it was because they're serving something far greater than just their ego, right? It's service beat that touches everything and everyone. And that's what happens to the boy, right? He gets connected to God, he gets connected to heart, and he is now, how can I help others? How can I serve others? And the little boy is looking to extract, the sacred king is looking to serve and give his heart. And that's what we're here to create, and that's what men so desperately need all over this planet, is to lead a life of service, lead a life of being connected to their heart and their soul. And as we have a planet full of men who are doing that, well, we would never be in this current situation that we're in right now, because we need strong men too. Can't just be strong women. It's the feminine, the masculine is weaving together to unify and create union on earth of the energies.
It's I appreciate you sharing all that, because I was thinking about in our practice, right? Every May we do a Mother's Day promotion, and it is incredible. This month is strong as a mother. It is, it like the phone starts ringing, the energy starts increasing. Moms draw a line in the sand. They've brought all their kids in, and they're like, okay, it's my turn, right? And I have this thing, where I've been doing this over a decade, and I usually, like, if a dad shows up, maybe at the first appointment with the kid, I'm like, whoa, what's up, dude? Welcome. Awesome. Great. Because normally I don't see you for like 6 to 12 months. Families they'll start to get healthier. They'll start to have their nervous systems more optimal. And then dad'll kind of stroll in at some point. And in our like whole pediatric community, we call affectionately this dad Back Pain Bob, right? Because he's not here for optimal health potential. He's here because he was laying on the ground for 2 weeks, for multiple years in a row, that he just because his back goes out, right? And he shows up and he's like a little disgruntled. And I usually make a joke, like usually intake forms say like, hey, my wife sent me. Like there's no information about it. There's no introspection. There's no self-awareness. Meanwhile, you look at all the moms' intake forms about themselves and their kids. It's like an encyclopedia. And you're like, yeah, that's something we can work with. We're coming up on June, and June, we've been trying for like the last 4 or 5 years to do some sort of Father's Day promotion. Last one, I think, it's kind of a joke. We're just like, do you even get adjusted, bro? Like just like quippy like themes. And it's like somebody hits the switch, right? It's like an off switch. And like the phone stops ringing, no one comes in. And we know, and Dr. Ryan and I both are dads, and he's a newer dad. And it's just this thing where you see men who, once they become a dad, who know it, right? Who know the responsibility. It is a guttural constitutional shift it's one of the most beautiful things in the world when men do it. And it's one of the most repulsive, and I don't mean like gross and things like that. I mean repulsive energy when a man hasn't done that. And it manifests in my practice like, we know it. We know that it's the number one reason families will not start care in our office, is because there is a man, maybe a boy, who largely is so invested in the medical system, so invested in paying for the insurance and only going to those providers. But really behind that is a like extinguishing, or maybe just never had the stoking of that masculine fire inside of them, right? It's a deficiency that I think you're speaking to, which no one does that today, really, right? Like, see that mountain? Like, see ya. See you in a few days, however long that takes. No bags, no nothing, no food. You got to find water, essentially it's like, the fast. And I think you could break down all those different aspects of things, but I think I want you to get maybe more pragmatic about how that was for you. You know, maybe what that ping was like that you got, you know, as far as a message from God, and then the listening, and then the obedience, right? The obedience to be like, yeah, I'm going to go. And then I'd love to know like what that journey was like for you, man. So many people have asked me what I do to stay mentally and physically resilient in the midst of the unending polarization, fear, and tyranny. Literally nothing has made a bigger impact for me than daily cold plunging. 3 minutes, 37 degrees every morning for over a year now. My friends, I wanted to tell you about the Edge Tub from Edge Theory Labs. Their portable and inflatable tub can alternate between an ice bath and hot tub. I've been regenerating the benefits of cold plunging every day, like better sleep, better focus, and more energy. We have had some really amazing interviews to learn more about cold exposure. But in the meantime, I invite you to check out Edge Theory Labs' website to learn more. I'm also happy to share an exclusive offer for Future Generations podcast listeners, $150 off using the code TheFutureGen. You can find more info in the show notes. Get cold. What's up, FG fam? One of the single best companies whose products have supported the optimal wellness of our family for years is Earthly Wellness. Kate TG and her team have stood for truth, health, and freedom in ways that paved the way for so many of us. They experienced heavy levels of censorship long before it was popularized, and they stood strong and persevered. Their products are clean, cost-effective, and honestly, they work for all ages. From supporting my wife, our oldest, and our little guy, Earthly Wellness provides products that have been foundational for our family for years. We especially use their products right before bedtime. Their Feel Better Fast and other herbal tinctures are some of the best in the world, as well as their amazing Goodnight Lotion, the magnesium oil, are mainstays. I am so excited to be partnering with Earthly to offer Future Generations podcast listeners 10% off your first purchase. You can find the code link in the show notes. Enjoy the rest of the show. Love and appreciate you all.
In February of 2021, I was at a men's circle. And I ended up, when we had lunch, I ended up sitting at a table of 3 other men. There was 4 of us. 2 of the men were in their early 40s. And really similar ages, like 41 and 43. And ironically, really similar stories. Both of them were on the verge of losing their marriage. One of the men had a family. He had 2 kids. And the other man was just married but didn't have kids. And yeah, they brought up their rites of passage journey and how it saved their lives and it saved their marriage. Wow. And both of them were at that breaking point of just like, if I don't do something to show up better as a man and for my family, I'm gonna lose my family. And right as they were like, kind of like giving that prayer to God of like, show me what I need to do. Like, what can I do to show up better as a man and as a lover and as a partner and as a provider. And when they just shared me about the rites of passage journey, and I was like, what was it like? Where did you go? Like, what came up for you? I was just so like magnetized. Like I felt like a boy listening to the elders and the chief, like telling like this epic story that was just so, I was just so fascinated and like captivated and taken back. And yeah, we talked about it for the next like 45 minutes. And as they were speaking about it, it was kind of like, you're going to do that. Like I knew I was going to do that. I just didn't know when. And then as we were leaving, they're like, you should go find Eric, ask him about his rites of passage. And so I went and found Eric, and I knew who he was. I had heard I heard his name briefly at the very start of the men's retreat. And just really quickly, he just said, hey, Brother Andrew, you want to hear about my rites of passage? And he said, I'm a 58-year-old man. And before I went to my rites of passage, I was a child. I was a 58-year-old child, 58-year-old boy. And when I went on my Rites of Passage journey, I can finally tell you today I'm a man and I feel like I belong. And that's what happens to you and a man when he goes on this Rites of Passage journey. It's a belonging. It's a becoming of age, not at the ideal age when we should do it, but there's never too late, even for a man who's 73, right? Yeah. There's the death of the boy and that becoming of the man. And I was just like, when I talked to him, I was just like, I was so ignited, inspired, and yeah, I was so curious of just like, God, what is this journey? Why do I feel so like enthralled and ecstatic just like hearing about this? And so a couple of years ago, after I met that man, that's when I started getting the message, the like very clear messages, like it's coming, like your time's coming, you're going out there. And so I started tuning in and getting quiet in my breathwork practice and my meditation. And it was, you're going out there and not in a group, you're going out there alone for 7 days, 7 nights. Wow. And so I had a brother who knew the mountains near Mount Rainier pretty good. And I just said, hey, bro, I'm going out for 7 days and I need a ride. And he's the one who took me out there. He dropped me off at this spot and he was like, hey man, like, should I come check on you? I was like, if you love me, you will not come check on me. Wow. I was like, I don't want you to come check on me. I don't need you to come check on me. I am going into this full knowing that I can handle no matter what comes up. And so as he dropped me off, I put my backpack on, I grabbed my walking stick, I tightened my boots, and I headed out into the wilderness. I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know where I was going to land. I could feel the subtle anxiety and like nervous energy starting to like pump through my veins. And I started just like doing some deep breathing, like, wow, okay, like this is it. Like there's no turning back. And it was exhilarating. I was anxious. I was feeling the whole spectrum of emotions. And so as I started going down the trail, I was peeking into a couple spots, going here, going there. Each spot I checked, I was like, nah, this ain't it. This ain't it. And then I saw this little trail. Once I was about 2 miles into the wilderness, I saw this trail and I was like, that's my spot. I just knew it. So I peeked down the trail. I went up and went a little more up and I just continued to follow it. And it reached this little peak, this like epic little peak. And as soon as I got up there, I was like, yep, this is my spot. And so I set up my tent. I set up my little ceremony altar, my sleeping bag, and my tarp. And there began my journey, in October, mid-October in Washington. And there started my journey of like fully sinking in, like, whoa, you're literally going to be like in the wilderness, like in the wild, alone, fasted, no food, just water. I had a bottle of Acea Redox per day to deepen the spiritual and mental, emotional, and purification because of what it does to the genes and the DNA. Wow. So I brought that out there. I received like specific instructions to bring that out there. So I was like, okay, this is going to make my pack way heavier, but I'm doing it. And yeah, it was just like when I set up all my stuff and I looked out of the cascading mountains for miles and miles and miles, I was just like, wow, you're in for one hell of a ride. And yeah, what my days really, that first night was pretty hardcore. Every night was between like 29 degrees to like 34 degrees. Like it was proper, like really cold. Wow. And that added an extra element of this is pretty hardcore. Mm-hmm. And the first night it rained a little bit and I was like, oh my God, is it going to like pour on me? 40 mile an hour winds were like ripping my tent. And I was kind of shitting myself. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like it was pretty intense. I was like, did I make a mistake? Is this too hardcore? Did I bite off more than I can chew? And I had to like just breathe and like come into my heart, come into my body and just trust that I was right where I was supposed to be. And so, yeah, what those next 7 days looked like was just the listening of the trees, the listening of the birds, the looking at the sky, spending hours each night under the stars as I just like lied there on my back with all my gear on, just like huddled up, like welcoming the cold hitting my face, just like fully surrendered to the cold, welcoming in that grit, that like full surrender to like I was a little bit cold and I was okay with it. I wasn't resisting it. I wasn't saying I need to be on a couch. I need, a bigger jacket. I was just with it. I was just with all of it. And through many hours of just, doing my own form of Qigong, breathwork every day, meditation, sun gazing, just like breathing in the rays of the sun, just breathing in that light, that energy into my body. And what was so profound, and one thing that came to me was the more prana, the more life force, the more God I welcomed into my vessel. Here I am on day 4, and I haven't got an ounce of hunger.
Wow.
I'm not hungry. Day 5, subtle hunger started to creep in, just like a little bit, very mild. And what came through to me was like, wow, this ancient ritual that's been happening for men, the most ancient ritual in existence, is allowing a man to tap into his true power, his multidimensionality. He doesn't need to go to the fridge to incessantly snack. He doesn't need to go to his phone to constantly receive validation from texts, to scroll on social media for hours a day, right? It's just like that pure beingness of being a human. And then I hit day 6 and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like at the tail end of my journey. And I'm continuing my practices. I'm doing my sun gazing. I'm feeling my body just releasing so much energy. I'm being with that mild to medium hunger that's like slowly popping in, but I was fully like, I was good. There was no like, oh my God, I have to eat. It was just kind of like, there's some hunger there.
Yeah.
I'm all good. And just that like hours and hours each night of gazing at the stars next to my fire and just, I could feel myself dying and I could feel myself being reborn.
Wow.
And I remember just like envisioning, these old patterns and these old inabilities to show up and just like throwing them in the fire, each night and just communing with the fire, igniting the fire, the flame within me of my true masculine blueprint, of the provider, the protector, the warrior king, the warrior queen, right? Like, and I also received that when a man does a rites of passage, there's no masculine, feminine, or polarity teacher on the planet that can do for a man what rites of passage can do to integrate and unify his internal energies.
Wow.
Because it's very masculine, and also at the same time, it's just being, which is very feminine, right? So there's something so profound that happened to me out there. And so here we are, night 6. And I received that I needed to climb this mountain across the way. And here I am, I'm like, is it insane that I'm going to go climb a mountain like across the way while I haven't ate anything? And I was like, you're going, you have to go. And so I went and I trekked a couple hours up to this mountain, 3.5 hours. And I finally reached the top, and it was just this never been so proud of myself in my entire life. And I felt the ripple effect that was going to have on many, many millions of men and over the years to come, to also become an initiated man and spread this message that men have to be initiated if we want to reclaim the sovereignty of this planet once again. It's not a maybe, it's not a possibly, it's every man that is on this journey will have to lead the torch to inspire other men to go on this journey to also be with God and be with himself. and lose any codependencies, the things that dim his light, that play small, that don't think his truth is important, that think it's another man's role to speak up for children and it's not his. This is a hijack in his own consciousness. Every man is here to do that, regardless if you're a doctor or a chiropractor, a sports player or an artist or a painter. Doesn't matter. Every man is here to protect women and children and our brothers and our elders. Right. And so, yeah, for me, it was, it's like there are some things I could say that I don't even know how to say in the English language. It was that profound of what it did to me on like an alchemical level. The weeks after that, I was just a very different man. I never, the man that went into that wilderness, the wild before, he was gone. He didn't exist anymore. The way that I was able to show up and respond in a new level of motivation and just clarity, the crystalline clarity that a man, when he leaves his business and leaves all of his attachments and goes out, the crystalline clarity and wealth and abundance that infiltrates his business, it's night and day. And so quite literally, it is the biggest and best investment that a man will ever do for humanity, for his family, and for his business. And for Christmas, for example, let's say, the greatest gift we can give to our child is not a present. It's not a physical thing. It's the gift of consciousness.
Wow.
It's the gift of love. It's the gift of embodying a new, profound man. And that energy is felt by that man's children. That energy, it pierces the consciousness of that man's children and his wife. And now his woman is like opening in new ways, surrendering in new ways, trusting his guidance, trusting his leadership. And this planet is desperate for feminine wisdom, but also embodied, aligned masculine leadership.
So 7 days, how far would you say you went? Like if you did you have a map? Did you track any of that? Or was it just all basically just following trails?
So it was a trail. I didn't know where I was going.
Yeah.
I knew there was a lake about 2.5 miles where I was going to get my water.
Mm-hmm.
I actually didn't take a trail down to the lake. I hiked like straight through the wilderness to get there. And on the way down to the lake to fill up my 2.5-gallon jug, I actually lost my life straw, which is the most important thing that I could possibly take with me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And ironically, I had a Tibetan singing bowl. And that's where I boiled the water to kill any bacteria on my fire every night.
Wow.
And so I was boiling the water in my Tibetan singing bowl. And with my ASEA that I had, which was 32 ounces per day, I also had the water that I was boiling. And yeah, if I didn't have that, I would have been drinking the water and I think I would have been fine. But I would have had to figure it out regardless because there was no one coming to save me. There was no one coming to pick my hand up and be like, "We got you." Right. And that's really what it's all about, you know, that boy, that becoming a man, that man becoming a man and figuring it out on his own.
Any wildlife?
Yes, lots. Day 3 was the animal day. It was the day that I was sitting in meditation and I was like, I said, God, just send me some deer. I was like, I want to see some deer. And as I opened my eyes, there was a deer.
That's crazy.
And two infant deer were literally right there as I opened my eyes.
Wow.
2 hours later, a whole herd of elk were right next to my camp. I couldn't see them, but they were walking right through the trees, probably 50 or 60 of them, doing their elk call, which if anyone's heard of elk call, it's a really, really high-pitched like squeal. Yeah. It's really, really cool. Hours later, I saw this beautiful fox with this bushy tail. That afternoon, there was crows circling around my tent. They didn't any other day that day. And then literally that afternoon, there was multiple hawks circling my tent. It was just like the day of animal wisdom and animal blessings. It was just incredible. And then a couple other times I also saw some deer, and I was definitely calling in some black bear medicine, but I didn't see any black bears.
Didn't have to fend for your life in that regard.
No, no, didn't have to fight off any coyotes or black bears or anything like that.
I mean, I've done a lot of miles in the backcountry, and obviously I have food. Um, and it's a gnarly experience, you know, especially like, and I'm a military guy, so I'm always compass, map, land navigation. I'm mapping all my checkpoints. I have a specific rhythm of how I'm doing things, and so a part of me is like anxious because I'm like, I can't imagine just going like, 2.5 miles. There's a lake up there, you know, and just not really having some sort of infrastructure behind it. But I think that's a part of it, right? That's the training that I've been under, and the training that I've been under largely is yes, people would say, oh, I can never be in the military, it's so hard or whatever. It's like, no, actually, in many respects, it is almost impossible to fail sometimes because of how ordered and structured and regimented it is, you know. And I'm not discounting my experience, but what I'm saying is it's not the same. It's not the same as like ancestral rites of passage where you're literally doing everything on your own, you know, for 7 straight days without any sort of like infrastructure behind what it is that you're actually going to run into, what you're actually going to experience. And then, so on a day-to-day basis, you're saying some Qigong, some breathwork practice, and basically it's just you and God, you and nature, you and you.
Just the simplicity of being with your breath.
Wow.
And because when you're out there, right, you're going to be like, I need to be somewhere else. Like, you know, there's going to be that need to feeling pulled to like, I'm leaving my family, or like my daughter's at home. I need to be with her. Like, it's just
Wow.
just coming back into that present moment over and over and over and over again. And just being in the beingness, being with whatever comes to the surface.
Tell me a little bit about June 7th to the 14th.
Yeah, so July 7th.
July 7th to the 14th. My fault.
July 7th to the 14th, I'll be guiding 8 brothers, 8 men out into the Olympic National Forest for a rites of passage. It's definitely not for every man to like go out there alone. It's definitely like a whole other layer of like hardcore. And so the one thing that's beautiful about doing it in a group is, you know, you will remember these men for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You know, these men that you go on this rites of passage journey, you'll remember these men for the rest of your life because it's one of the most defining moments of a man's entire life. And so, you know, we start by meeting that Sunday, you know, in Washington. We all come together. We have our Last Supper, so to speak, and then we break our fast that morning, and we head out into the wilderness, into the Olympic National Forest, and that's when our 4 days and our 4 nights starts with the men. When we bring the men out into the wilderness, we're all together, but we don't communicate to any of the men in the 4 days that we're out there. So each man has their post, so to speak, and they're paired up with one other brother, and they're kind of like partners with another brother, but they never see that brother. They're just communicating through an avenue of stones, so to speak, just to let the other brother know, like, hey, bro, I'm good. I'm all good.
Yeah.
And then when we come out on day 5, after that 4th night, we all reunite again, and we reunite by the fire and start making our way out of the wilderness, break our fast with all organic fruit and watermelon and, apples, peaches, berries. And then we make our way for 2 days of integration at our huge cabin to just, be with and really just open up the space for all the men shares and what they experienced. And that's where the magic will be revealed, of just the excitement of getting to hear what each brother went through in their journey, and to be seen and to be witnessed, and to just open up the space for just raw vulnerability of, where they're falling short in their life and their disconnect, and just welcoming in a whole new level of leadership and embodiment. And yeah, it's a, for me, it was the most worthwhile thing I ever gave my energy to, and something that truly transformed me. And it transformed me, it transformed my work, it transformed, I mean, just really more things that it infiltrated every single realm of my life, every single piece. As a provider, as a lover, as a speaker, the level of confidence, the level of motivation, the level of needing others to approve what I was saying. I didn't actually realize how many small energetic cords were tugging at me. It was like the ultimate soul liberation. So yeah, it's Dan. I've honestly, I've done some amazing things. I've gotten to speak at some amazing events. I've gotten to witness thousands of people, transmute endless amounts of trauma, and I've been blessed to be that conduit to help people discover themselves. And I've never been more humbled in all of my work than to offer this right here for men, because men need it. Men need it more than they could ever even imagine.
I think it's amazing, and I feel almost like, I don't know what the right word is, but the same thing kind of comes up, right? It's like it's a type of sufficiency, it's a type of nourishment, it's a type of like bringing into an essential aspect of our not just masculinity, humanity, that has largely been devoid for multiple generations. If you could think about your own bloodline and your own family tree, like how far back do you have to go where the men in your lineage did something like this, and it's a pretty wild experience. I don't know the answer to that from my viewpoint. And I would say that, my intuition says it's probably somewhere on my mother's side of the family. They're from Taiwan, and largely way more ancestral than my dad's side was. I don't know though, like, because I can go back 4 generations, and literally I'm watching a TV show right now that I'm like, I don't love TV, but I got caught in this one. It's called Shogun. And it's all about samurais, right? And you look at these people who are these leaders of these warrior kings, right? And if you go back 3-4 generations of my family, especially on my mom's side, that's exactly what they look like. They were in Japan-controlled Taiwan. They literally had kimonos every single day, like the whole full-on like garb. And I don't know that. I don't know that part of me. And it's crazy. Like the introspection and the kind of the way you can kind of mess with your own mind, in a sense that, like, oh wow, so multi-generationally we've been devoid and deficient of this essential rite of passage that, well, no wonder, right? No wonder where we are globally, right? It's not just in America, it's globally. Like we see this dramatically. And so I feel like, I mean, that's why, we have a pretty long line to interview people. And when you shared this with me, just because of some of the work that I've been doing, just for my own like fatherhood, like being a dad, and the work that I've recognized that I've had to do to reconcile all the things that I've felt over the last 4 years, like looking around and looking, like scaring people, scaring men, and men telling me, dude, do you know how stressed out you made us? Like our family. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, well, a lot of the things that you were talking about, like not all of them came true. And I was like, well, you know what's weird? The more that I think about the things that I talked about, I would say a good 75 to 90% of them are far worse than what I actually spoke out about. And guess what, bro? Like, it wasn't for you. It was for you, but it wasn't for you. It's for your kid. It wasn't like, if I'm sorry if I stressed you out, right? But I'm hopefully planting seeds so that when your kid comes of age, that obviously you're not taking that torch, right? You're kind of cowering to the things that I'm communicating about, but maybe the seeds have been planted enough where your kid is going to run with that torch, you know? And it's been a gnarly thing for me. Like, it's been a big, big mind fuck for me, you know, to like reconcile all of that. And then when we talked very briefly, and it's like, dude, let's get you on because I know the conversation. What's crazy is I think I'm going to put you right after Kelly Brogan, and Kelly's talking about this whole reclamation of the woman, right? And that conversation ended with this gnarly, like, cathartic moment, this story that she had. And I think it just perfectly just segues into talking about the masculine. And I think I'm just so grateful for it because of all the work that I've been doing, it's helped. It's helped a lot. The men that I've had come into my life speaking to me, the fathers that I've had come into my life speaking to me, recognizing that, you know, there's so much, like, the weight that we need to recognize, like, to put our families on our backs, to put the mission on our backs, is a lot. But what you're sharing is something that is so spiritually, energetically, mentally, emotionally essential, of a grit, of a resiliency, of an adaptability, that I believe is so much more, like you're saying, more profound than the English language can actually come out with. Like, because it sounds like a 7-day fast. It sounds like just straight nature. It sounds like Vipassana, right? It sounds like silent meditation, right? Like, it sounds like all of these things combined, plus you might die, you know, like, actually some days questioning your mortality. I lost my life straw, right? Like, I lost my life straw, and I have a Tibetan singing bowl that I'm going to boil, you know, maybe each serving of water in, you know, and how am I going to, you know, you never know, right? Because we know how toxic the world is. So I'm just incredibly grateful. And at the end of the day, yeah, I got, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, you know, when do I do this, right? And when do I accept your invitation, you know, to move through this?
And right, like, talk about our truth and our voice over the last couple of years, Stan, right? When we answer this call, it's the knowing that every time a man steps into this mission, this journey, we're saving children from being trafficked.
Wow.
We're saving children from being jabbed. We're saving families from being impoverished and in poverty.
Mm-hmm.
We are literally picking those people up with our energy, with our consciousness, because this new era will not be built through picketing in the streets. It will be built through women becoming these true, powerful oracle queens and men becoming sacred kings.
Wow.
And restoring the energetic of everything that was inverted through big pharma, through the food, through the water we drink, through all of these inversions that think that we're doing the right thing, or that this is normal. But a lot of the things that many people think are normal are anything but normal, as we know. Right? They've just been programmed to believe they are normal. Just like this man saying, "Hey, dude, felt a little bit scared when you were sharing these things." That man said that to you because he's a child. He's a boy. He's a boy who has a boy or a girl or whatever kids he has. The point is, he's a child who has children. And we need to make kings that have children. A man that can hold space for his wife while she's in her storminess and super moody and she's on her cycle. A man who can hold space for his child to process his sacred rage and scream. And be like, "Hey, buddy, let's feel that. Let's get that out together. Let's make it fun. Let's come into our body." A child who has a child can't do that, because holding space for ourselves is an extension of being able to hold space for others.
Wow.
And that's what happens when a man becomes actually a man and becomes a sacred king that's ready to serve his people, that's ready to lead from love, and that's not ready to extract from everyone around him, but ready to, how can I give my heart? How can I help people? How can I raise the consciousness of all life on earth? How can I free the animals going through endless suffering and giant manufacturing of like 6,000 pigs, like literally living in a tiny little warehouse?
Yeah.
While they're all getting killed in front of one another and having torture going through their blood. How can we stop that? It's through our love. It's through our willingness to see ourselves. And men, desperately, our women are craving for our men to step up in leadership. They're craving for our men to rise. And they're looking for the sacred men. They're looking for the sacred kings. And through each man that has the bravery to carve this path, because that's exactly what we're doing. We're literally carving this path that's never been seen before. And through every man that does that, we literally revolutionize the world and restore healthy masculinity, which is going to change this world.
It's beautiful. Andrew, say a father, a man is listening to this now, or, which largely, I am of that percentage, right? I on any given day, it's probably an 80-20, that there's more mothers and more women that actually listen to my podcast, but maybe also are called to reach out or to have more information, to accept this invitation for their spouses. Obviously they can't do it for them, right? And they have to have that consent, and they have to have that own buy-in. What would be a next step for them?
Yeah, I've had quite a few Zooms with people's wives, men's wives being like, hey, my husband desperately need this. And I say, look, I'm more than happy to jump on the Zoom with your husband if he wants to answer this for himself.
Yeah.
You cannot make this man want to see himself, and neither can I. This man has to choose himself for the first time, maybe ever.
Wow.
And so if it is calling to you, if it's calling for your family, or if you're a man listening to this, all you have to do is just DM at Breathe, Heal, Evolve, or Andrew at Andrew Genovese Healing on my website, which is andrewgenoveshealing.com. And I'm more than happy to share information, answer any questions, or if you want to, we can totally jump onto a 20-minute Zoom and just connect. And like I said, right, if it excites you, and also you feel like you're shitting yourself, you're in the right place. Because anything big that's going to feel shattering to our current identity is going to have that subtle, overwhelming feeling, or that like contraction. But, on the other side, if we can lean into that resistance, will be the biggest soul liberation that you've ever experienced in your life. And that's what happens to men when they answer this call. They finally feel like they belong, and they finally feel like a man for the first time in their life. And for a 47-year-old dude, that's a pretty profound feeling.
Yeah. Especially if it's for essentially the first time, right? I'm curious, Andrew, what you would have our audience do next. Like, what is one, given all the things that you've shared, what would you say would move our community in a powerful way?
I invite people to go out to nature and get really quiet in a really special place to just really just even be there for the day, and just feel, just being there for 6 hours and just feeling how connected you feel just from being in nature. Well, then imagine that being under the stars and being in a fasted state and going back to your true origin, which every man's body is designed to fast. And so, I invite everyone on here to just go connect with nature for the day. And, I've even had women say, well, what if I feel called to do a woman's rites of passage through that? I always have to tell every woman, not every woman's body is designed to fast. But for spiritual reasons, if you feel called to do this kind of initiation and it's pinging you, absolutely, I invite you to answer the call. Maybe it's not for 4 nights, maybe it's just for 2. Maybe it's a modified 2 nights. Maybe it's Even for one night, you'll feel like a new person just coming out of there, being under the stars and hearing the sounds of the frogs and the crickets. I mean, it'll transform any human, but specifically for men, there's not a single man on the planet whose body is not designed to fast.
Wow.
When we were traversing, well, the Native Americans, when they were traversing the land, if they went 13 days without food, guess who got the food first? It was the children and it was the women. Then the men ate last because they were kings and they served their people. They served the children. They served the women, right? Because they were connected to God. They knew who they were. And that's what this now moment's all about. And brother, if you're listening to this, I just invite you to lead, to be one of the men that doesn't just listen to this and says, I'll let other men do that. Be the man who answers the call. Be the man who leads and inspires other men to also, reclaim the true divinity of their soul. Be that man.
Andrew, this has been one of my favorite episodes. Honestly, I didn't know what to expect. I know what to expect because I know you, and obviously I'm very biased because I love you. But I also know that I've never done this. Right? I've done a lot of profound work in my life. I don't consider myself a novice. However, I will say that I've never done this, and I don't, like I said, I can go back to my entire bloodline, and I don't know when this was an inherent, essential part of our culture. And one, I'm gonna start to dig a little bit to see where and how I can find out. But I will say that, given our history and given everything that we've been through together, literally on two different planes, very different ways that we manifest our art into the world, but so synergistic that this is something that I haven't felt in a long time is so, like I said, just nourishing. It's a nourishing thing where it is fulfilling a humanity-based deficiency, a modern human-based deficiency that could only have an outcome of healing, right? It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and how that healing manifests. And from what you're sharing, it's a beautiful thing, right? It's a beautiful thing because we know, because it's basic, tangible evidence in front of us, that women and mothers have stepped up, and they have, in many respects, embodied that masculine energy and that masculine role, especially in the fight for our kids. And I see this as an opportunity for a lot of men to remember, right? It's not a discovery. It's an uncovering and a remembering of who we are. And I'm very grateful for you, man. Very, very grateful.
Yeah, my heart's ignited, brother. I'm grateful to have had intimate time in your space where you do your sacred work, and to be connected over these years. And I feel even more just grateful to be coming back on your podcast for the first time in almost 3.5 years to deliver this message that is, like we talked about, a bigger message than I can even attempt to really articulate in words, and the grandiosity of men becoming initiated and literally completely changing this world through having kings lead in healthy masculinity once again, and releasing all the war trauma, and the 18-year-old boys literally learning how to kill. But instead of teaching them how to kill, let's teach them how to connect to God and to nature and to their heart.
Wow.
Let's create a world where we do that. And that's what this is all about.
So wherever you are in the world listening to this, if you feel called in any way, just reach out to Andrew. It's actually, it's quite phenomenal, because I know how busy you are, how responsive you can be. And I think that invitation, regardless, is, if you are in any way in your ecosystem on Zoom, connecting for a few moments of time, men, I think you will be nourished and healed as a result of that exchange. And women, if it is that, you're reaching out as well for your family and for your bloodline and for your husband and for the father of your children, I believe it to be one of those potentials for pivot points in that family tree in a way that I don't see other opportunities like this in the world. And so, Andrew, for all I can from our community, thank you for sharing with us. I hope people will take you up on this, and I can't wait to hear how that echoes through our community and throughout humanity. I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you, Stan. So much love for you, brother.
As you probably know, I'm the clinic director of the Future Generations Clinic of Chiropractic. I wanted to invite those of you in the greater San Diego area to come check us out. We expect and experience miracles in our office every day and would love for you to experience the same, as well as your family, especially your kids. This month, we're offering our new patient package for just $67 for podcast listeners. The offer retails at $349 and includes an in-depth consultation where our patients literally tell us we know more about their family's health in the first 15 minutes than virtually every doctor on their healthcare team combined. Our state-of-the-art clinical workup, including Insight nervous system scans, full spine digital x-rays, and a functional exam. We also include a full report of your results, a customized plan to realize your greatest health potential, as well as your first adjustment in our office. Check out the link in the show notes for all the details and claim the offer. Love and appreciate you all.